The hollow of Blackwood. I hadn't set foot in Blackwood since I was a frightened child. The memory of that crumbling New England town, with its creaking houses, fog-shrouded streets, and legends whispered among wary locals, had haunted my dreams for decades. Yet, when Aunt Lydia died unexpectedly last winter and left me her dilapidated farmhouse on the town's outskirts, I knew I had no choice but to return and confront the past I'd tried so desperately to forget. Driving into Blackwood was like stepping into a sepia-toned photograph of a bygone era. The streets, lined with tired storefronts and flickering gas lamps, exuded a palpable melancholy. I could sense that the town's residents, with their tight-lipped smiles and furtive glances, carried secrets as old and heavy as the autumn mists that rolled in from the surrounding woods. The farmhouse itself loomed on a narrow, overgrown drive bordering a dense copse known simply as the Hollow. Its weathered siding and sagging porch spoke of decades of neglect. Inside, dust motes danced in the weak light that filtered through grimy windows. While sorting through Aunt Lydia's meager belongings, I discovered a stack of leather-bound journals hidden in an old desk. Their pages, yellowed and spidery with Aunt Lydia's careful script, hinted at a history more sinister than mere family eccentricity. I soon learned that my family's roots in Blackwood were steeped in a dark pact, a curse whispered about in hushed tones by the locals. According to Lydia's entries, our ancestors had once struck a bargain with a mysterious force that dwelt in the nearby woods, a spectral presence known only as the Hollow Man. In exchange for prosperity and protection, a price had been exacted. Every firstborn in our bloodline was doomed to serve as a living vessel for that ancient, nameless power. Even as a child, I had heard the legends, the fleeting sight of a gaunt figure darting among the pines on moonlit nights, the mournful hum that seemed to emanate from the forest floor. Now, reading the faded ink of Aunt Lydia's warnings, I wondered if those childhood terrors had been real all along. That first night back, the farmhouse's silence was broken only by the wind's keening and the occasional groan of settling wood. I lay awake in my narrow bed, straining to distinguish the natural creaks from something else. Through the rattling window panes, I thought I heard a low, almost musical murmur, as if the earth itself were whispering secrets. I told myself it was only the wind, but a cold knot of dread coiled in my stomach. Over the next few days, I ventured into town in search of answers. At Marty's Diner, a shabby, neon-lit relic where the locals still gathered, I met Marty himself, a burly man with lines of worry etched deeply into his face. When I mentioned my return, he leaned in and said in a hushed tone, "Blackwood never forgets. And sometimes it doesn't forgive either." I pressed him for details of the curse, but he only murmured about tragedies long past. Children who vanished near the woods, strange lights flickering among the pines, and a sense that the town was always under some ancient, watchful presence. One damp, gray afternoon, while rummaging through the attic of the farmhouse, I discovered something that made my heart hammer against my ribs, a portrait tucked away behind a battered trunk. The painting depicted a man with strikingly familiar features, dark, unruly hair and eyes that mirrored my own. On its back, barely legible, were the initials J.H. I couldn't place them, but the uncanny resemblance unsettled me deeply. Who was this man, and why did he look so much like me? That night, dreams invaded my sleep. I found myself wandering a narrow, moonlit path through towering pines. Faint voices whispered my name, and always, at the very edge of my vision, I caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure. A man whose presence stirred both dread and a peculiar sense of longing. When I awoke, sweat cooling on my skin, I couldn't shake the feeling that something in the woods was calling me home. Unable to rest, I slipped outside into the chill of midnight. The full moon hung low over Blackwood, casting long, wavering shadows across the yard. As if drawn by an irresistible magnetism, I made my way to the tree line. There, beyond the broken fence and overgrown grass, I noticed a narrow dirt trail I'd never seen before, a path that disappeared into the depths of the hollow. I followed the trail, each crunch of dead leaves underfoot, echoing in the oppressive silence. The trees grew denser and more twisted, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. Soon I emerged into a small clearing, bathed in an otherworldly silver light. There, beneath an ancient oak whose trunk was scarred by time, stood a solitary figure. He wore old-fashioned clothes, and though his face was partly shrouded in darkness, I could see that his eyes burned with a sorrow and intensity that sent a chill stray.